News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, we are back. It is game week, ladies and gentlemen. It's the unofficial 40 podcast right here from Soonerscoop.com, where we have virtually the whole crew here. Josh is here, Eddie's here, George is here, I am here, Carrie Murdoch, and we are the unofficial 40, brought to you by the Oklahoma Zoological Society's 16th annual Zoo Brew, presented by Byron's Liquor Warehouse at the OKC Zoo Friday, September 27th. Craft beer fans aged 21 and older will enjoy a variety of tastings from the finest breweries in Oklahoma, as well as wineries and distilleries. The gates open at 6 o'clock. Tickets will sell out, so go visit ozsgiving.org for details and to buy tickets today. Zoo Brew at the OKC Zoo Friday, September 27th. They are your presenting sponsor for the unofficial 40 this week, where we are in game week and we have breaking news and we're trying to do all kinds of crap around here. And George is having to write last-minute stories as we're trying to interview the play-by-play voice of the Temple Owls. But let's just start off at the top here. DeMarco Murray has been suspended for one game in the 2024 season because of various impermissible contact violations of the NCAA rule book, and also something with the track and field team, which seems a little bit more nefarious, where the track coach, who is no longer the track coach at OU, told one of his female athletes to give like $2,000 to two dudes on the track team. Which
I kind of support that as well. I like that.
Sugar mama is what that was. He asked someone to be a an actual sugar mama. But let's start with DeMarco. This is something that we've seen. I'm just really shocked, Josh, that there are still recruiting violations that you can commit in this day and age.
Guys, with what we're seeing happen at Michigan, we were talking about before we started, I couldn't be more for this. I know that's not the message I'm supposed to send, but guys, we're talking about phone calls, text messages, all that's changed in the college football world, and we're still going to try to keep track of how many phone calls a coach can make, how many text messages. Guys, that's not the world we're living in anymore. I just don't know why we're trying to hang on to these really antiquated ideas.
Yeah, I don't think that I really care. At the end of the day, other than the embarrassment, I guess that I don't even know if it's embarrassing.
It's a slap on the
causes
wrist
for DeMarco, 65 phone calls, 36 text messages.
What I want to know is who do we blame?
It's kind of fun, though.
Who do we blame on Friday when the running back rotation sucks?
I think DeMarco is hoping that Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes have the games of their lives. And the biggest question is, why is that guy not in there more between those two?
And now, we should point out, it's just a one-game suspension at any point in the 2024 season from what we've gathered. Maybe
Are we assuming it's the opener, or do we know it's the opener?
Well, I think it's one of two games. It's either going to be the opener or it's going to be the main game. But maybe because it is the first game, you go out there and then you serve it later on at some point.
Although if you wait until Maine to do it, it looks kind of bad.
That's what I support then. That's what I want him to do.
It's just flaunting your
just
carelessness for NCAA.
Sure. What are they going to do? It's a crooked organization.
Go against the man.
Exactly.
They're going to get sued for millions of dollars.
I doubt it's going to be the OU Texas game or the OU Tennessee game that he serves as suspension. But yeah, that was, I guess, if nothing else, it's surprising. It's kind of fun little side story going into the season opener.
It happened about 11:10 this morning, I think, is when it came down.
I think that the interesting part about all this is kind of what we had read, Carrie, just in terms of there is an outside world or an alternate universe where Brent Venables could have been held responsible for this.
Yeah, he was up for a suspension as well, but they deemed that that was not needed in this case because basically, maybe it is because they've had a change in, I don't know. You mentioned J.R. Sandlin. Lee Davis also was gone after Sandlin, right? Or was that before?
Well, I think it was right before she left and then he left, I believe.
But they didn't have anybody hired. Who was it? Jolie.
Lele.
It was a while for her to get hired, remember? I mean, it was months, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is probably black and white stuff that probably he should have known about, but at the same time,
he can't monitor everything.
Yeah.
And
Well,
there was
it's kinda
something
fun.
about their reporting was down for like 2 months, or there's like a 2-month delay in the reporting process on that stuff. So.
I wonder too if Kirk Ferentz just got suspended at Iowa for, I believe, recruiting violations.
Is that what it ended up being?
I believe so. I think it was something with a.
This all goes
impermissible
back to
contact.
Jim Harbaugh, doesn't it?
Well,
the
I think the
NCAA was like,
NCAA is
we
wanting
have
to
to get our
crack down.
shit
Yeah.
together to go after Michigan. And while we're doing that, we can't just make it look like we're only going after Michigan. So let's get Iowa. We know they did something. We got this thing that Oklahoma did that we know about. Like, let's start issuing some penalties here so it doesn't look like we're just going after Connor Stout.
Well, and it should be noted, OU did self-report this.
Yeah.
Right.
And from
This is a child. Oh, go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, from what I can tell, too, most of the punishments that are served down onto the program from here have already somewhat expired. I think the only thing that will really affect DeMarco will be a 3-week ban on recruiting phone and electronic correspondence for the football program from December 8th of 2024, so the end of this year, beginning in December, to March 31st, 2025, going into next year. Everything else, it seems they've made it through the 2023 football recruiting calendar.
And OU may well have its running back recruiting done by that point in time. If they can reel Caden Jones in by December, it's just going to be like, well, we didn't get started on 2027 quite as early as we wanted to. So I think that's all pretty manageable. But again, this is the NCAA. Like, I mean, in the theory we're talking about, it's a kid lashing out, mad because they're basically like, I wonder if they're looking at, they're like, okay, Michigan should be getting, entire coaching staff suspended for 6, 8, 10 games. But we know we can't do that. We're not going to mess with them. So we're going to try to make it up in the aggregate. We're going to get a game here from Oklahoma. We're going to get a game over there. They're just trying to play a little catch up because, again, this is the Michigan thing. We had a post on the board yesterday where people were talking about, like there was a faux report. Somebody got had by it on Twitter that, it was going to be this massive, punishment, and they were going to have to forfeit all their games from last year, the national championship, all that stuff. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing meaningful is going to come out of that.
And even if something does happen, who cares?
Yeah.
To a certain extent. I mean, it's not going to take away Michigan winning a national championship. It's not going to take away the memory of that. One other thing that has been pointed out by Bob Przybilo, a prohibition against unofficial visits during the first game of the 2024 football season. Have you noticed that just in terms of starting to put together a list for Friday?
Yes, there has been. And you wonder, I guess, again, it makes perfect sense for OU. The timing is perfect because how many guys can come on a Friday night anyway? Like, especially season opener, all that sort of stuff. So, like, it adds up. And I was kind of, the last few days I've kind of been hitting guys up and I'm like, okay, they don't have a game. They're like, yeah, I'm not going, this, that, or the other. And I was like, okay. And I just didn't think much about it. I mean, it's not an exciting game. It's a Friday night. A lot of guys are, even if they're not playing, they're going to go see their buddies across town play, whatever it may be. So there were a lot of reasons that would make sense. But yeah, if that is the case, then you couldn't pick a better weekend for Oklahoma to serve that punishment.
How are you not playing a high school game if it's the first week? Or I guess it's not the first week for high school. So, yeah.
I think it is.
Scrimmage
in the state of Texas, is it the first week, Josh?
Sorry, I had George. Guys, how dedicated I am. I have the practice report queued up, and I accidentally touched my headphone, and it started playing the practice report from the other day. So I had that going. What was the question? I'm sorry.
Is
it week 1 for Texas high schools?
Yes.
750 games on the schedule. I saw that. That's the most ever played on a particular weekend for high school football in one state. Week 0 up here in Oklahoma.
It's crazy. Like Oklahoma has some going, but not nearly so much. But yeah, Texas is full slate. They're all over the place. And like I said, with OU playing on Friday, I'm not going to go to a Friday night game, but I still think I'm going to catch 3 games this weekend. That's how full it is from really Thursday evening to Saturday night.
Yeah, you mentioned on the recruiting report you might catch a doubleheader on Saturday.
I'm on the Scoop account right now, and in the DMs, this one is worth reading. This is from Hodge, Texas Sooner Hodge. I wonder if the running backs will carry out a child-sized DeMarco jersey to the coin toss and protest.
I would hope so. That'd be amazing. That'd be unbelievable. Just like they did for Baker back in 2018.
Orlando.
That'd be amazing. That'd be awesome.
Which we asked him about last year at the Baker charity Topgolf thing.
Yeah. Orlando's the best.
And he said he'd never been asked about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
How do you go that long?
I don't know if I believe that, but
anyway, well, guess what? The NCAA, they still have eyes. Apparently, they went and got some LASIK because they're starting to catch people left and right. And Eddie, would you approve if an NCAA, I don't know, what would you call them, enforcement officer showed up to Enjoy?
Yeah, we'd get him in the chair and then completely botched the procedure. But that wouldn't be at Enjoy Vision, which is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. The combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What they're doing for the Unofficial 40 listener is they're giving $400 off LASIK. If you're interested, go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY withme.com and use promo code U40 for $400 off LASIK. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
Yeah, and so, like Eddie said, the worst part about this to me is you can't have unofficial visits for the first game.
Yeah, and I don't even know if that's even classified as like worst case scenario, because it is kind of an interesting situation with the game being played, as Josh said, on a Friday night. There's a lot of people that are just simply not going to be able to make it.
So we move on. That being said, you can read the story on more into the story, and if there's anything developing, we'll have that on Soonerscoop.com. But it kind of takes away from what we could have talked about to start off the show, which was George's fantastic kind of profile of Jackson Arnold that he released this morning after you wanted a little bit more time, but I was like, screw you, get it out. We got a big sale going on. But you did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I beat myself up too much on those type of stories. It's those are hard to write because it's like you're trying to, encapsulate this guy's entire life so far into, a few thousand words. And
and the great thing about my favorite part of the story is how you started. And I remember being at the spring game, and you're like, I'm gonna go sit with Todd Arnold and see what he has to say. And you actually went and sat with the family in the stands. This wasn't last spring; it was the spring before.
It was his first spring game.
Yeah, his first spring game when he hadn't touched the field. He hadn't been able to. He should have still been in high school at that time. But to go from that time period and to remind us all, like, from their point of view and their eyes of seeing Jackson get out onto a college football field for the first time to where he is now, ready to take over and either sink or swim as the next great quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. It was really intriguing kind of just seeing the family take you through this whole process.
Yeah, and I think it's, you think back to that spring and there was at that time, there was still so much skepticism around Dillon Gabriel. Like there was a large portion of the fan base that thought that Jackson should just start over Dillon last season, and so kind of taking it back that, and then spending some time with him this summer. I went down and did a big sit down interview at their house and got to know him, and just kind of the way that Jackson was raised, being an only child and kind of having a football background in his family, and then kind of since the Alamo Bowl, just the fallout of that, and kind of how he's approached this offseason. I think it was really interesting to hear their point of view and how it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. I thought his dad gave me this great story about the night before the Alamo Bowl, some drunken OU fan stopping Jackson in the lobby and kind of giving him
hotboxing him in the lobby.
It's kind of telling him, hey, this is what you guys should do tomorrow in the game. And that was kind of an eye-opening moment for them to be like, that's just part of being the quarterback at Oklahoma. It's like you're going to run into some crazy fans out there. But
the other thing that was really interesting is you pointed out, like, he was offered so early by Jeff Lebby and Seth Luttrell.
Both of them. They were two of his first offers, and it was before he even started a high school football
when
game.
he was still a backup at Denton Guyer. And Josh, it brings up that question. George, I thought kind of the one dig in the article was Malachi Nelson being the backup at Boise State.
I took a little shot there, but like it's the truth. Like you look at the path that ended up for OU at quarterback. I mean, it really worked. We'll see what Jackson does. Like, he has to go out and perform well, but early indication is that OU ended up on the right side of that thing.
It makes you wonder, Josh.
I don't think there's. Go ahead.
If Lincoln was still here, how screwed would they be at quarterback going into this year?
Yeah, I mean, because guys, and you think about it over the last, like, obviously Caleb stays, but no one's coming in the last couple years because they knew Caleb was there. Malachi would have been your answer. Kind of the same situation that USC's in, but they just managed to keep Miller Moss around. Like, I mean, like that wasn't going to happen at OU. So I don't know how bad that would have been. But guys, I don't, I don't want it to sound super pat on the back, but like I remember talking to you guys after seeing Malachi his junior year. I was like, I don't see the same guy. Like something looks wrong here. And he, as a sophomore, I thought he might be the best player in the country. I thought he was unbelievable. And then as a junior, when he still committed to Oklahoma, I watched him and was like, that's not the same thing. And I remember Chad Simmons, while we were still with Rivals and Chad was on 3, he was at the game with me that night, and he was like, man, I'm not seeing what I thought I was going to see. And I was like, I'm with you here. I thought the better player was Mekhi Lemon. I thought Mekhi was much better that night than Malachi was. And then as a senior, obviously he wasn't really on my radar in the same way, but it seemed like it just kind of continued a downward trend. Meanwhile, Jackson Arnold, and I won't lie, when OU made the offer was the first time I'd ever really sat and watched Jackson Arnold's tape. And I was like, holy hell, how is this guy not in the top 100? I loved his junior tape. And he's, almost like if you were talking about a graph, just two guys moving in very different directions, almost from that point in their junior year. From basically, you could say it from when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, they have been on very, very different paths.
What did you take? We did get Jackson Arnold after practice last night, but did you, George? I'm sure you were over there just kind of like, okay, after writing all this stuff and knowing that the stage is set, you probably had to look at him from the viewpoint of, okay, how is his mental state going into this? Like, did you get any kind of a sense of like where he was mentally going into this first game? Because he had the BYU moment, but he's had the bowl game. But now, as you said in the article, this is his team, and he's worked really hard in the offseason with those receivers to get on the same page.
I think he's really it's like a quiet confidence with him. He doesn't say a whole lot when we do those media sessions. I think he's gotten really better about answering the questions in a different way than he did maybe a year ago. But he's not someone who's going to come out and give you these long answers, but he certainly seems confident in his abilities. And I think that's kind of my takeaway from the whole story and getting to know his family is he's this guy that you don't really see it. But behind the scenes, he is an intense dude. Everybody that I talked to was he is an ultra competitor, and you might not hear that in his interviews or media sessions. And even yesterday, but then you go back and you listen to what he said. I only put in one quote from Jackson in the story, and it's at the very end. And it was a quote he gave yesterday that basically was listen, I want to create my own legacy here. I understand the history that comes with being the quarterback at this place. And hopefully one day I can have my own statue out there, but I have to do it my way. And I thought his parents giving that answer too about, his dad said something along the lines of he understood what it meant to come to a program that was kind of rebuilding the brand of that quarterback with Lincoln having left. And he wanted to be a part of that. That intrigued him to come to a new coaching staff, come to a place that, yes, has the history of it. He understands that, but he wants to be he doesn't want to be in that same category as Baker and Kyler in terms of, Lincoln's guys or whatever. So I don't know, Kerry. I think that Jackson, I walked away from writing the article feeling pretty good about Jackson's chances of being a great quarterback, but now it's one of those things where it's he has to go prove it. He has to go out there, and we're not going to know. That's the thing too. And I think I said this in there. It's we're not going to really know after the Temple game or Houston game or Tulane game. We're not going to know until probably halfway through the season if he's really got what it takes. Well,
and I think the thing too about Jackson and kind of the things you talked about, learning the offense with Seth Luttrell, and it's different. And even the piece she wrote on Seth Luttrell earlier this week, and by the way, you can be a subscriber to Soonerscoop.com. We got a great special going on. It's going to end. You better listen to this podcast quick because it's probably going to be over if you're listening to this later in the week. But what is the code again for our 50% off right now, guys? Is it Kickoff 2024?
It is, yes. Kickoff 24.
Be more prepared for these things.
Kickoff 24.
Kickoff 24. The code you use, you can get 50% off an annual subscription. That's just $4.99 a month paid out annually. We don't give a lot of half off deals here. Like, we believe in our product, so we'll give you guys on YouTube like $1 for 2 months that we do. But you notice we don't do a lot of, like, we value our product. We don't want to just have a bunch of 60, 70% off sales. This is only a 48-hour deal. So it's 50% off an annual subscription to Soonerscoop.com. You can read the great articles that George is putting out there. You can keep up with Josh's recruiting information minute by minute, all the stuff on the message boards, be a part of a great community. But one of the things you wrote about in your Seth Luttrell article was just how he is as an offensive coordinator, how he's borrowed all these different things, and he's a little bit air raid, but he's also this and this and that. And it's very different than what Jeff Lebby is at his core, which I think is a hardcore Art Briles offense guy. Like he and Josh Heupel kind of believe in that offense. They run that offense. Seth Luttrell's a little bit of a different animal because of all the stops that he's had. And you really get the sense, like, from what I read from you, the sense I got was Jackson has really embraced this offense that Seth Luttrell runs.
Yeah, like that was something that, I think both those articles kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways, because in the Seth story, it talks a lot about, and Graham Harrell was fantastic in that story, as well as Kevin Wilson, talking about how the way Seth teaches his offense, which can be complex, it comes from the Mike Leach coaching tree, and there's going to be a lot of Mike Leach in what they do offensively in terms of the pass game, and more Kevin Wilson in terms of what they do in the run game. And they both talked about how teaching a young quarterback, Seth is extremely gifted at that. And then pair that with talking to, Jackson's, quarterback coaches who, he has 3 different guys. One of them is an Elite 11 guy that, trains several different Power 5 starting quarterbacks. The other one actually trains Dak Prescott for the Cowboys. And both of them told me about, the biggest thing they noticed with Jackson is obviously he has great arm talent, and they worked on a lot of different things with him this summer in terms of throwing the ball off balance and manipulating it and all that stuff. But they said the biggest thing with him is he understands offenses. He understands what Seth Luttrell wants to do. Like, he would bring the playbook with him to some of these private workout sessions, bring some of these receivers like a Deion Burks, Nick Anderson, Farouk, Bauer Sharp. Some of those guys would come out to these private workout sessions, and he was telling guys where they need to be, what it would look like against certain coverages. And they're like, that's something that Jackson, kind of added to his game this last year. And I know that after the Alamo Bowl, like, that was something he watched a ton of film this offseason. That's something that he has been extremely focused on in the spring and the summer, sitting in the film room with Seth Luttrell, trying to get a grasp of the offense, but also understanding and reading coverages. And obviously when you look at last year and in the limited space that, limited time that we got to see him play, I think decision-making is kind of our big question mark with Jackson. It's like, can he, obviously we all know he's a great athlete. He can throw the ball all over the field, but can he make the right decisions in the right moments? And so that's what I'm excited to see with his development, because again, we're going to see him throw some amazing passes and be like, man, that's great. But can he make those right decisions? I think that was a really cool aspect of the story, is that's been his main focus, over the last 8 months.
Really good stuff. I want to get to some other stuff as well. I want to remind you guys that this episode of the Unofficial 40 presented by the Zoo Brew, presented by Byron's Liquor Warehouse at the OKC Zoo, Friday, September 27th. And here's some people to tell you all about it.
It's back! The Oklahoma Zoological Society's 16th Annual Zoo Brew, presented by Byron's Liquor Warehouse at the OKC Zoo, Friday, September 27th. Craft beer fans aged 21 and older will enjoy a variety of tastings from the finest breweries in Oklahoma, as well as wineries and distilleries. Gates open at 6 p.m. Tickets will sell out. Visit ozsgiving.org for details or to buy tickets today. Zoo Brew at the OKC Zoo, Friday, September 27th.
All right, thank you to the Oklahoma Zoological Society for presenting the unofficial 40 this week. And remember, OZSgiving.org. You can buy tickets. Get them today because they're going to go fast. Friday, September 17th, a great event for you and your friends. By the way, I found this out. They have red pandas at the Oklahoma City Zoo.
Beautiful.
I'm surprised I haven't already been there to see them.
We're going to find out that Carrie's going to sneak into the exhibit.
I don't think I need that on I don't need that on like the Lost Ogle or wherever they put that stuff these days. Yesterday we got a lot of people at practice, and I want to talk about Jayden Jackson. We've talked about him a lot, though, on the practice report that we've already got out there on YouTube. I thought one of the more entertaining things about practice last night is I think that this is all on the fly, but what Danny Stutzman did yesterday at practice when he just decided, so we're doing all this in the south end zone, and we're at the tunnel. Danny just decides, I'm going to walk to the other tunnel and just make everybody chase me to interview. And I could tell it really pissed Eddie off because he had a bunch of camera
I was yelling
gear.
at him. I was like, Danny, what are we doing? Where are we going? Where are you taking us?
So he walks like all the way across, like past the field goal, like past the crossbars or whatever you want to call that, just the field goal apparatus. The goalpost. There you go. Thank you. I needed the help. By the way, they've got some new signage in the stadium this year. If you haven't seen it, just chance to make more money, which is good. It only
I put up a
helps
picture
everybody.
on the board.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I took a picture, but I never posted. Anyway, it doesn't really affect the game at all. You won't notice any difference in how you view the game.
It looks good. I think it's going to come across on television very well.
We saw some of like the new game, the in-game graphics, the scoreboard graphics.
Yeah, it looks clean.
Really sharp. Very clean.
I liked it.
I'd be proud to say that I designed that. I mean, it looked fantastic. So I think a big upgrade you're going to see. They were installing all the chairs. I mean, my God, everybody just buys chair backs. I was telling George, it's like when I went to games, I was not a chair back person. I felt like it constrained me. Like if I wanted to be able to jump up and get on top of my seat, like I didn't want that chair back there.
Well, and I know where my parents' season tickets are and where I grew up going to games. People don't sit down there. Like there's no real sitting down.
Yeah,
in section
if you have a chair
32.
back, you're incentivized to sit down. I don't like that.
Chairbacks were a real hit, like back in the mid '90s. I feel like because being able to like go carry it. This is like when the Boy Scouts you would still like. They weren't there at the seat already, but you would bring them up from the.
You go to high school games. You take your chair
No, I'm
back,
talking like at the OU game.
Right,
The team sucked in the 90s too. Like if I was sitting down for 3 hours. You needed
to sit around.
Yeah.
There was more sitting around, no doubt.
Well, they were losing because everybody was sitting down in the 90s. That was our excuse then. But no, so we're out there and interviewing all the guys and thankfully, Brent gave us like 6 guys to interview.
Yeah, it was a really good evening.
So, got to talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I have been kind of amazed by not only the stuff that Brent said on Monday, but the way that his teammates have talked about him. I can't remember a rise of somebody just through the preseason portion of camp than Jayden Jackson, who's in line to make the first start as a defensive tackle as a freshman since Tommy Harris in 2001. It's a very short list of players that have been able to do so, but the way that Brent talked about him, not just on Monday at the press conference, but on Sunday night during the coaches show,
it just blew up.
What are the realistic expectations, Josh? Has Oklahoma found like their guy in the middle for the next 3 years?
The crazy thing about Jayden Jackson is it's great and dangerous at the same time, because while I think it's a clear sign that they think he is a truly special player, not just like, oh, he's talented, but they can trust him. Like they trust him to do the things he's supposed to do, and I think it says a lot about his intelligence and maturity. And I know that was something I was listening to Brent, I think in the press conference, was talking about how much he just was consistent from day to day to day, and I thought that was really telling. At the same time, we've had some people on the board like, Josh, should he have been a 5-star? I'm like, guys, I don't want to go that. Like, there's still some things you have to do, like, play your first game. Like, all that stuff still matters. But I do think it says a lot to the argument that I know a lot of OU fans had, after we saw him, live last year. We had some bunch of video from that, and he was really impressive. I think had a couple sacks the night I saw him. there's a lot of talent there. I think everybody just focused so much on David Stone, they kind of forgot that Jayden Jackson's extremely talented. He may not have the ultimate ceiling that David does, but the fact that he's a little ahead of David, I don't think should be shocking, because I think that's something that we talked about, guys, because the way he plays the game, it doesn't take as long to transition. I mean, like, he's shorter, he's more compact, he's going to play with a better pad level just naturally. So I think there are things that just work out for him a little better. It doesn't really change my ultimate view of things, at least not yet. But again, I think if you wanted to say, okay, Jayden Jackson should have been a top 150 guy, okay, I can get there with that conversation.
I think some of this too is, I mean, I think Jayden's going to be a really, really good player for Oklahoma, but some of him starting on the defensive line is the result of just not having a ton of guys with experience there. Or not
having a more consistent Grayson Holton.
Right, or Jacob Lacey. Like, if Jacob Lacey's on the roster, then Jayden Jackson probably isn't listed as a starter. And again, that's not, I don't want to take anything away from Jayden. I think he had really a phenomenal camp, and he's going to play a lot this year for Oklahoma, but it's also it's like a combination of him being really, really good and also Oklahoma just not having a ton of guys up front
let me
have
throw
experience.
Let me throw this conspiracy theory out at you. I know, when Dusty was on the Family Business, he was talking about the way that Dominic Williams was used last year by TCU, and the fact that he didn't know if he was going to be a great pass rusher on the interior, but he thought he had that opportunity to do that. But in TCU's defense, he wasn't asked to rush up the field. He was basically asked to block gaps. I mean, he was in what they did. It wasn't an aggressive defensive tackle type defense, and he thought, okay, with the skills that I see, maybe he can be a really good guy that, like a Jonah Lualu, like they tried to use him a year ago and were successful in a lot of ways. Like, is this possible that it's going to be DJ Terry and Dominic Williams out there at the first snap when they take on Tennessee at the tackle spots?
I would be very surprised if it wasn't, unless they're trying to stagger them in some type of way.
Or they're just saying, we're playing lesser teams right now. Let's get these other guys some reps and see what they can do.
There's definitely a little bit of that. And just if people haven't dug into Temple yet, you don't need to. It's a bad football team, like a very, very bad, like a maybe one of the worst football teams.
Back-to-back 3-9
in Division I.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they've lost a lot of guys from last year. Now they do have some returners, and we talked to Kevin Kopp about it, the play-by-play guy for Temple. That'll be in the game day preview on Wednesday, or Thursday. They're not going to be very good, and I think Stan Drayton probably will get fired by the end of the year. It's a bad football team, so you should be able to get the opportunity for a number of guys to play on Saturday.
I think what I'm curious about is when they go out in a 3-man front, which I think they're going to do some of that this year. Who are their three guys, and does it look like, is it Dominic Williams or DJ Terry in the middle, or even a Jayden Jackson? Like, do they have a 3-man rotation playing that head up nose guard? Does a David Stone get out there in some sort of edge guy, and then you walk someone up? Like that to me is where I'm more curious, because I think you can do several different combinations when you're running that 4-man front where, Jayden can be a head up nose or a 3-tech or whatever it may be. Like, that's where, I don't know about you, Josh, but that's kind of where I'm curious is, and we may not see the 3-man front. Like, I think they're going to be, we always talk about the offense being vanilla early in the season. I could see them being very vanilla defensively and then throwing some totally new looks out there against Tennessee with a whole new, with a really young quarterback.
George, you bring up a really good point. It's something I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about. What I'm interested, because somebody asked me, like, what percentage do you think we're going to see of 3 down, 4 down against Temple? Guys, to me, I think it's about what you don't see. Because to me, if you see a lot of 3 down, that tells me they're still working on it. Like, they're still figuring that out and getting the paces and, making sure their guys are comfortable with the assignments. If you don't see a lot of 3 down, I think they're saving it for somebody. I think they're trying to keep that as much off tape as humanly possible. And that it probably is a sign they feel pretty good about both their personnel groupings and basically the assignments and what Zach Alley has given to them over the last 6 months or so of that 3 down stuff that we know he likes so much at Jacksonville State.
Yeah, I just kind of go back to, okay, you got David Stone, basically third team. but Brent went out of his way to really say about how he's been one of the hardest workers on the team, or the hardest worker on the team. Like, to me, that's, now that we're talking about this, they're hiding him a little bit. I mean, they know David Stone is a difference maker. They just don't want to play it up like the last thing that they were going to do is put David Stone first team defensive tackle. I mean,
it's kind of funny to me, like the way that the Jayden Jackson conversation became over the last 48 hours or however long it's been since the depth chart came out, and like everybody's initial reaction is, oh, this is awesome for Jayden Jackson. Well, what the hell has happened to David Stone? When in reality, that's not the conversation at all. It's like, David's fine. He led the team in sacks in the preseason.
That was the first text I got from my best friend.
I think that's just the way that people are wired, though.
The text was, Jayden Jackson's starting, so does that mean David Stone's a bust?
It's just,
that was literally the first, exact text.
What's funny is, like, people say that. Have they not been paying attention? We've said it since Jayden Jackson committed. Like, Josh has said since the start, like, this is a guy that could come in and play early. Like, he has the technical and fundamentals to be able to do this. Yet David Stone's ceiling is obviously higher, and he's going to be a great football player someday. But like, he's a raw talent, and that's why I think you're going to see a healthy dose of David Stone early in the season. They're going to get this guy as many reps as possible, because I think he's just going to get better and better the more he plays. But the reality is, it's like Jayden Jackson just fundamentally is a better football player right now. And if you've been paying attention the last 12 months since Jayden Jackson committed, everybody's been saying that.
Josh, I know that it might not have been a big question about David Stone, but I think one of the things I've been pleasantly surprised with, and Brent mentioned it when talking about him yesterday, was just, I always kind of wondered, like, coming out of high school, what that motor was going to be like. He's a guy that I think likes to have a good time. It seems like the maturation of David Stone maybe is a little bit ahead of schedule for what I thought it would be as a freshman. So I thought that was like a big positive, that he's one of those guys that is really bought in. And you obviously don't see him out on social media as much, which I don't have a problem if players do, but you got to kind of know the time and the place type of thing, which, I don't know. I've been pleasantly surprised with the continued, I guess, in a way, development or maturation of somebody like David Stone that can put him in place to be a big contributor on this defensive line this year.
Well, and it's interesting, Eddie, because that was the thing. And again, some of it was probably sour grapes, but you heard people kind of saying, I guess probably from programs that David Stone considered but didn't actually end up picking, was kind of like, oh, he's not that good. He's going to have work ethic problems, and he's not going to be that kind of guy. And to their credit, there were some that were like, I think Jayden Jackson may be the better player. I mean, there were some that were saying that, but it was always kind of more from the point of view of, well, David Stone's not as good as you think he is, kind of thing. And all we've heard, and guys, not just what we've heard, when we saw David in the summer, it was like, holy crap, that guy had, since I'd seen him, I think I saw him in early November last year. And then again, I saw him at the Under Armour All-American game in late December, early January. So in like 6 months, I bet he'd put on 20 pounds of muscle. Like, he looked like a different human being, because David's always been so long-armed and long-legged. And that's what I talked about with what George was mentioning earlier when I said Jayden was a little more ready, because David was so long. And the things that made him special are tougher to do when you go to a higher level of competition. You've got to get bigger, faster, stronger. He can't just physically overwhelm people with his talent, as to where Jayden, like, he's going to play with leverage. He's going to get under you. He's going to jack you up. Those things can work regardless of how old you are. Those are just hallmarks of your game. So, again, I agree 100%, Eddie. When you keep hearing people say David Stone's put the work in, he's done the things we've asked of him, he's been super mature about it, all of the people see David and how, like, kind of smiling and outgoing he is. And I think there's this thing that people's brain just do, like, oh, he's soft and he's not focused on football and that's not where his head's at. But that's not David. I mean, David moved away for 2 years and really, guys, if we're being honest, really didn't want to make that move. He didn't want to go there, but I think he knew ultimately it was better for his football career to go to IMG and really develop. And from the guy that left from Dell City and the guy that went to IMG, I think he grew up a lot. And I think you see that now in Norman, that he's really hit the ground running and hasn't been overwhelmed with the workload.
let me put it this way. I think by the end of the season, David Stone is very squarely in the 4 or 5 man rotation on the defensive line.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What do you think that looks like, George? I mean, like if you were going to pick 5 to rotate by, let's say, LSU.
Terry, Dominic, Jayden, Stone, Grayson. I think those are your 5 best right now. I mean, I just don't know. Like Ashton Sanders.
Big unknown.
Yeah, big unknown. Devon Sears, unknown. Marcus Strong hasn't really practiced, which I think is partly why they picked up the kid from New Mexico. I know some people have been asking me about him. I think he's a practice guy. They just need bodies. And he's a big body. I don't expect him to play, but I think their best 5 are the 5 that I listed. And I could see a situation where if David really comes on, maybe all of a sudden at the end of the year, I don't know if he's starting, but maybe he is their 2nd or 3rd best guy up front, and he's getting a lot more run than maybe a Grayson Halton or a DJ Terry or somebody like that.
All right, Friday night coming up, first action that we'll see Oklahoma. There's one way if you don't have tickets that we recommend. That's the Game Time app, gametime.co. Look, we've all done ticketing apps. There's been an evolution over the years, and Game Time's a big part of that. Their whole thing is they want to make it easy and quick for you to get into a sporting event. Like they do stuff where you can get right up to kickoff. You can still buy tickets. Even an hour after the game starts, you can still buy tickets. Like maybe if you're in Edmond and you decide we want to go down to Norman and go to the game, let's get on the Game Time app and let's wait until we get there and see what we could park and all that before we get the best deal. You can do all that stuff. I mean, the technology is fantastic. George, I know you kind of do the same thing in Oklahoma City when the Thunder play. Like, you might be out at the bars and say, hey, the Thunder's playing. I wonder how much it costs to go to the game tonight.
I do it all the time. I'll last minute buy tickets, sitting over at a bar or something and go over there. And right now I'm looking at the tickets. We're a few days from kickoff. You can get tickets for $23. And if you use the promo code ON3, ON3, you get $20 off. So think about that.
Terms apply.
Terms apply. But you think about, what is that, $3 for tickets? I don't know if that includes fees, but that's a cheap ticket to go to the game on Friday.
Well, and here's the thing.
DeMarco could use it.
DeMarco could use it. I don't know if the NCAA will let him be there, but he could use it. Now, if you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will even credit you 110% of the difference. They've got great stuff like event cancellation protection, 24-hour returns guarantee. Return your ticket within 24 hours from time of purchase for a full credit to your Game Time account. But here's the thing. Go to gametime.co. Get an account, get the app, and Eddie, tell them about the great deal that they can get as first-time ticket purchasers.
All you got to do is you get $20 off. All you got to do is go to download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and just redeem the code. All you got to do is spell out ON number 3. That's the number 3, ON3 for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed.
Terms apply.
Terms apply.
All right. Thank you so much to Game Time. And the game coming up this weekend, we've talked a lot about Jackson Arnold. One thing we haven't really talked a lot about, except for how much Jackson Arnold's worked with him in the offseason, Deion Burks. What do we think about Deion Burks? And he's kind of been the overlooked guy with all the depth chart release. We just always expect Deion Burks is going to be a big part of this offense. How important, guys, is it for him, and Josh, we can start with you, to just kind of get off to a fast start as an Oklahoma Sooner?
I think it's more about what it sets up for going forward. I mean, again, when I look at a team like Temple, I expect Oklahoma to go out there, really separate early, and this game should be a lot about seeing young guys, seeing the David Stone, seeing those guys get a lot of snaps, that kind of stuff. But for Deion Burks, it's about putting it on tape. Because I think a lot of even coaches are not sure what Deion Burks is going to be. They know he was talented. They saw him do the good things at Purdue. But how much more can he be with elite offensive talent around him? And I think that's what you're going to see. And if anything, if I'm Nick Anderson or somebody, I'm like, go crazy, Deion. Go crazy. So in that Tennessee game, I'm man-to-man outside with a Tennessee defense that really has some questions in the secondary. Like, I think it's big for setting up what Oklahoma is going to see from defenses going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think the other thing in the pass catching, guys, is the tight end. Like, what are we going to see out of the tight end?
I was going to say, too, just on the Deion Burks stuff, it's just crazy to me how, like, in my mind, I think of Deion Burks as like a returning letter winner from a year ago, even though he's never taken a snap at OU. I just expect him to be really, really good, and as advertised, as we've heard through the preseason, when you almost kind of forget about a guy that we talked to yesterday in Jalil Farouk, or you forget about...
God, he's matured so much.
Yeah.
Like, I chatted with him one-on-one for a bit and for the Arnold story, and was just talking to him about his offseason too and stuff, and he's just is so... You can just tell he's matured a lot.
I think that we would look back at his season a year ago a little bit differently had he not fumbled the ball in the Arizona game and the Alamo Bowl.
That was in the article.
I wrote that in the story. I'm like, let's just say he doesn't fumble that ball that's returned 87 yards for a touchdown. The narrative around Farouk, the team, Arnold, everything is different this offseason, I think.
It really is. It's just kind of stupid, I guess, in a way, the media's part and how a narrative is formed and how things become a little bit of a life of its own. But I do think that, like, he's a guy that we haven't really talked about, and I think he's going to benefit from Deion Burks being really good.
Yeah.
Did you know, I hate to keep bringing up Arnold, but I put this in the story. I went back and rewatched the Alamo Bowl game, and OU went down 13-0, which I forgot that they got down that
real
quickly.
quick.
Yeah.
Could have been 21.
And Arnold had thrown, I think, 2 picks. And after that, Arnold, from the stretch from then until Farouk's fumble, was like 17 of 24, 263 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and
like
some
they were
big bombs, too.
They were humming offensively. Like Arizona could not stop them, and then everything just flipped
that
upside
opened
down.
up the run game. Then Gavin Sawchuk kind of went off during that time period as well. There in the second and third quarters. Yeah, it could have got really ugly. I went back and I was logging the Alamo Bowl, and it was just like, holy shit, I completely forgot that this thing was basically sideways before it even began.
By the way, you know the one name that was brought up by Brent Venables since the depth chart's been released that, and I think, George, you've even said on the pod that we hadn't heard much about him, was Sam Franklin.
Yeah, and I thought the way he talked about him, and if you haven't watched it, you can see it on the Coaches Show, which they do upload those to YouTube now, since it's so hard to find on the damn...
I think it's Soonersports.com is the YouTube page.
Yeah, but you can go watch it. But I thought what was interesting, what he said about Sam Franklin, is that he might just be a gamer. Like, he might not be a great practice player, but like when they had their scrimmages, he had some really explosive runs. I think he said the most explosive runs of anybody on the team, in which I'm just like, well, that's crazy. But you look at his film from a year ago at UT Martin, and I know it was at UT Martin, and you look at his stats, like he had just these incredibly long runs in a lot of games where it's like, well, I don't know, maybe Sam Franklin can be like a home run hitter for him or something. I have no idea.
Maybe somebody that could benefit from the position coach not being there at the game.
Yeah.
Because his ass probably wouldn't be on the field if he's not doing it in practice.
I mean, I still think that it's going to be Barnes and Sawchuk.
No, I do too.
Leading the way, and I think Tatum's the true number 3.
What do we make out of Caleb Hicks?
I just think the other guys are better right now. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or if that's a good thing.
But when we've seen Caleb Hicks, we don't see a guy that's like, oh, he just doesn't have it. Like,
He's
every time
really
we
good in
see
the spring
Caleb
game.
Hicks, it's like, wow, why didn't that guy play more?
Yeah.
My question with him out of high school was always speed. And then when he arrived, like, I want to say in one of the first times DeMarco Murray said something, it was like, oh, he's got big time speed. Like, he can really go. And I remember being like, did I just miss it? And when you guys talk about Sam Franklin, like, I wonder if that's still the hang up. Like, because when you talk about Sam Franklin, okay, he can hit a home run. Like, is Caleb Hicks that guy? And if he's not, do you really need a hammer? I mean, Sawchuk and Barnes run well between the tackles. Like, I don't know what Hicks brings you that maybe you don't have, and again, you can always use another guy that can go 60. I mean, that's great. But, like, do you really need another guy that, he can get 4 yards for us when we need it? Like, I don't know how much premium there is for that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very vanilla game offensively. I mean, they might end up giving Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes a little bit of a blow, and letting Sam Franklin, letting Caleb. Maybe Caleb Hicks is a guy they know is going to have to run the ball a lot, so they're trying to motivate him a little bit going into this opener. I mean, I'm sorry that I do it, and I know I do it, but I just err on the side of conspiracy when everyone puts out a depth chart. It's just in my nature to not believe what I see when it's a depth chart. It's so many ors and all that. But here's my other big question. Does anyone really believe that Branson Hickman will be starting at center when they take the field Friday night?
The way Brent talked about him.
I know. I believe it. I'm saying I believe it, but do you believe it?
Yeah, I just don't know how serious like his injury is. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think that it's not obviously season ending, or I don't even think it's like
it sounds like Bates has the injury that affects him snapping the football more than anything.
Yeah. The one that I would watch for at center is I wouldn't be shocked if we see Garen Hatchett play some center. I wouldn't even be shocked if he started.
Well, and Brent singled him out on the show, on the coaches, on the Rudy show, as being able to play all 5 spots.
I think he might be the least banged up right now among those guys. Again, we just don't know. And Brent hasn't really given a good, clear indication. But when he talked about Hickman during his press conference, I mean, he kind of indicated that he's going to start on Friday.
I think Hatchett had a muscle strain.
Yeah,
is what I think happened.
I do think if Hickman, all things equal, if all guys are healthy, they want Hickman to start. Like I think that he won that job, and he's been the most consistent guy. I know. Well,
then it was one of the few positions that actually didn't have any ors. It was 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and I know some people are maybe concerned with his weight at 291. I'm pretty sure he's a little bit heavier than that. I don't know how accurate some of those weights were that were put out on the depth chart.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know when he took that weight, but I know that when he talked to us a few weeks ago, he was like at 300 is what he said. So,
and I'll say this: it's been very difficult for us to get a gauge on exactly how hurt guys are on the offensive line, especially at the center position. So I think it just naturally leaves us up in the air, wondering what we're going to see. But like I said, that 1, 2, 3 to me that says they feel like Hickman's going to be able to play. Could be totally wrong on that.
Yeah, the one that I don't think is going to play, we'll see.
I'm on to September 7th or whenever the next game is.
The one that I
really disappointed with
the
Temple
one on the
right
offensive
now.
line that I would be a little surprised if he did play, and we'll see, is Jake Taylor. I don't know if he'll give it a go.
It's all the ramp up to September 21st, and I guess to a certain extent next week.
George, with Jake, how much do you think that is he's just not needed? Like they're going to be fine without him this week?
I think he's got, not a super serious injury, but like if he missed next week too, that wouldn't surprise me either. Like I think they're going to be cautious with it. But again, if he runs out there, I think they're all
going to play. I think they're all playing on Friday.
You think so?
I have no idea.
Fully Eddie's saying it's a full go 85. Everybody's ready.
What's the difference between you only get 12, 13 games, and I understand taking it easy if some guys just simply
I'm just saying
can't
I think
play.
Jake Taylor's injury is a little bit more serious.
Like, do I think that Deshaun McCullough plays on Friday night? No,
hell no.
Do I think that Branson Hickman does? I don't really even think twice about it. I don't know.
I think I know where Eddie is because we've talked about this. He's in and I'm in that too. Let's just go watch some damn football.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
I mean, we've spent so much time debating who's injured, how
not
they're
going to really matter who plays. I think they're going to have some success running the football and just offensively in general. But at the same time, I'm more excited about seeing some of the guys that like Brent talked about, and we'll see some of the alignment obviously. But like the way that he talked about, like I thought it went under the radar yesterday, just the way that he talked about Lewis Carter and Samuel Omosigo, saying that they could be two of the best that he's had in a while, or Kendall Dolby and saying he's one of the most competitive guys that he's ever been around. Like, I don't know, when I think of all the guys that Brent's been around, that says something about Kendall Dolby.
Well, and I think just Des Malone, seeing what he looks like. I mean,
a bunch of guys
Woody
on the defensive side of the ball.
Start, and like if they what's the breaking point? If they get up by 42 at halftime, do they just leave all the starters out and just play young guys?
Yeah, which would be awesome because I think a bunch of those young guys are guys that I think in some way are going to figure into the depth of the defense and how good this unit really can be.
Do you think they'd leave the O-line out there for a little longer?
I think they should.
It's a question because they're not as cohesive yet, but at the same time, they're also a little banged up like George was just talking about.
I think they should, but I don't know if they would.
I honestly wouldn't. I don't trust the depth there. I understand trying to get some cohesion, but I just don't know if they have the depth that one guy gets rolled up and all of a sudden you're set back.
Just make sure Michael Hawkins is your quarterback, somebody that can really run around a lot.
Yeah. They've been already so banged up there. I think they're going to be pretty cautious, and that's again why I think there's a chance Jake Taylor doesn't play.
Yeah, Kerry, you came at that the exact same way I did. My thought was like, I'd love to see Michael Hawkins out there, but I'd like to see him with some guys that I thought could keep him upright and kind of see what he can do.
I think you're going to see a lot of people that you haven't seen.
There's a good chance if you're in a uniform on Friday night, you have a decent chance of seeing some field. Like literally anybody.
Here's the other question. Is there any other song to play between the third and the fourth quarter besides How Do You Like Me Now?
That's got to be that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe courtesy of the red, white, and blue. I don't know.
I don't think you can. It's too you can't do patriotism.
Well, I think they play that when they do the Patriot of the game, don't they?
Yeah. They sing one of those songs. I can't remember.
But yeah, I think it has to be How Do You Like Me Now?
That's cool. I like it.
We were debating that, like, you could get away with, like, Red Solo Cup.
I think that song's pretty cheesy, to be honest.
But it's a sing-along.
But it would get everybody involved.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's about being a sing-along more than it's about...
But didn't even Toby at one point publicly say, like, he didn't like that song or something?
I think everybody says that about... I mean, Kings of Leon says that about a lot of their songs.
Yeah, I don't know. I would play How Do You Like Me Now? I think it's much better.
The only song you can't play is Should Have Been a Cowboy.
Which is a great song.
It's a great song, yeah.
But OSU, I think, didn't OSU play that?
For a while. And then
they played it in Stillwater before. Yeah. They do the Garth Brooks song in between the third and fourth quarter up there.
I think they'll play it in Bedlam sometimes if it looks like they're going to win.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
They did up there last year after the game.
They use it in certain ways. But then it was cool because Toby showed up at was that the basketball game?
Yeah, it was after one of the Bedlam basketball games when he showed up at
he and Switzer.
Was it Eskimo Joe's or Murphy's? One of the two.
It was Eskimo
Joe's.
Because T-Bag was that. T-Bag.
Yeah. That was cool.
All right, Josh, anything that we need to hit on recruiting-wise today? I know you've put out some, top upcoming, guys to watch.
2026 like defenders, a bunch of guys out nationally. I mean, that's kind of where it's at, though. Like, following the Fasusi stuff last week, it's kind of moving sights forward to 2026.
It really is, guys. I mean, and for those that haven't seen it, we've got, I went with about 7 guys on offense, about 7 guys on defense, just some of the primary names that people need to know. And beyond the 3 commitments, Ryder Mix, Jonathan Hatton, and Jaden O'Neal that we've covered a lot about. It's time. I mean, I know that's something that sometimes people on the corner will struggle with, like, we got to already start thinking about the juniors. Yeah, man. I mean, that's just how this is. But guys, a guy I want to single out that I feel like Oklahoma's really making some positive moves with is the Deuce Gerald's kid from Collins Hill in Sewanee, Georgia. This is a guy at a good program in Georgia. Collins Hill's produced some good players through the years. This is a guy that in his first game of his junior year set the school sack record. Like, he's still got almost 2 full seasons to play and almost has 30 career high school sacks. Like, he is just an absolute dominant force. And when he came for the party at the Palace, I kind of thought, I don't know. I don't know that that's going to be a big deal. Oklahoma always seems to get one of those guys in, and then it seems like it's important, and then as months go by, they don't come back. He's already talking about making 2 or 3 trips to a game this year to Norman. So I think Oklahoma has definitely impressed him. And, with what we're talking about with OU being multiple up front, he's like 6'2", 270, so you could do a lot of variance with him and how you want to use him. And I think that's got to be part of the appeal, is really just seeing, he could play some edge, he could play some 3-tech. I mean, he could show – these guys are all thinking about the NFL, and he could show on it, NFL tape, hey, look at all these positions I could play. I mean, just get me on your roster, and and I'll help you. So I think that's one of the guys that I would really earmark that OU fans should be paying attention to.
All right. Look, we've got the game on Friday. Great news in that the Eskridge Lexus post-game podcast returns. Spoke with Ed Eskridge this week, and he's all in on continuing to be the title sponsor of the post-game podcast. So looking forward to that. That's always one of my favorite times of things of game day, except when you've just lost Bedlam and Georgia's just melting down.
That was, ironically, that was my favorite one.
I think it was a lot of people's favorite one. I still have people that tell me that they loved that.
Well, people loved our drunk pod, which I know we all thought was just, embarrassing after we let it out. And after 5 hours of editing, I remember that I had to spend to just make it. And it wasn't like to get rid of bad stuff when we did the drunk pod.
There was no embarrassment.
It was just terrible radio, terrible podcasting.
Thought it was fun. We should do it again. Hopefully not anytime soon.
I'm not saying it wasn't fun or that it wasn't terrible. I'm just saying you don't realize when you get drunk, you just ramble a lot.
The drunk pod, too, also coincides with the loss. So, obviously, a lot of people out there will not
want that.
You won't want to hear that. I don't know. They beat Temple by
I will say that
2 touchdowns on Friday night. We might have a drunk pod.
Georgia's profane rant on the Bedlam and the drunk pod, they're living in the same family.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. Just melt.
Which is the house that stored Elizabeth Smart.
I would assume those are 2 of our most listened to post-game pods, though.
I have to go back and check, but I'm sure they did quite well. I'm sure they're the most listened to, like, after the fact, like years later.
I would assume losses are probably when people listen to maybe not listen the most, but losses and big wins, just because they either want to relive the big win or they want to just suffer through the pain of a loss.
I would say like 11 a.m. kick start losses are listened to. If it's a late game and it's a loss, they're not looking for comfort because they're just passing out and waking up the next day and just want to forget everything that happened.
Acting like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
By the way, Josh. It also sounds like... go ahead, Josh.
Fine. I was just going to say, and Kerry, you're absolutely right. Like, when it's real drunk, like, I don't know if any of you guys listen to Will Compton when he did the Pardon My Take a few weeks ago, was just fall down drunk, and it was terrible. Like, I couldn't make it to the end because he kept talking about JJ Redick. Like, he wouldn't stop bringing up JJ Redick. It was really random. But that one, like, I don't feel like any of us are, if any of the drunk pods, like, or anything where we're drinking, like, nobody's ever been, like, belligerently drunk. Like, it just like, maybe I'm a little looser. And I think fans like that because I think they get I don't know, not that we really are ones to package our takes very much, but like maybe more of a clear, like no filter kind of thing. And I think sometimes, especially after a loss, that's what they want to hear. They want to hear that we're just as irritated about that third down call or whatever it was as they are.
Yeah. Or like being so bad like Pat McAfee that you reintroduce yourself to your guest 10 minutes into your interview. That was not ideal.
Pat McAfee in Dublin, like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, that was just bound to.
I think gummies on the plane contributed to that as well.
Well, I think it was the amount.
Yeah, 100 milligrams or something like that?
Insane.
Oh, my God.
All right.
I wouldn't know anything about that, but that seems like a lot.
Temple coming up 6 o'clock on Friday night. So essentially, I know we're early, but this is our Wednesday, folks. Even though it's Tuesday, this is our Wednesday. The game day preview will be coming out tomorrow on the YouTube channel as well. Then Thursday will be Friday, and Saturday will be Friday. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to enjoy the fact that we get to kind of sit around and watch some football on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Great games.
Dabo Sweeney, by the way, the latest to cancel his call-in coaches show.
It's unfortunate.
Tommy Tuberville's probably responsible
feels
for
like
that.
Tyler in Spartanburg, he really put it in.
This feels like a big year for Dabo.
I think it is, but still, he's won national championships there.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like he told Tyler last year. Like, do you know how many they were winning before he got there?
Yeah, I don't really expect much from the ACC in general. I think we saw
especially
that
after
Florida
State. My gosh,
they were
I don't know
horrible.
if Tyler Venables is suiting out this year or not. I mean, when we talked to him on the Family Business last, it didn't sound like he was expecting to play this year with all of his injuries. So,
yeah, I don't know.
All right. It's been fun. It's great to be in game week. Yeah.
Really, really good family business coming up on Wednesday. We won't release who we got, but it's one that you're going to want to watch.
It's truly another family member.
Biggest guest, right?
The biggest guest to date, yes. I would say so.
In studio.
It's going to be cool.
So that'll be coming up. Yeah, family business. Thanks for reminding me. Didn't mean to forget that. But thanks again to the OKC Zoo, to Game Time, to Enjoy Vision. And we will see you guys back here next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.